opportunity to have an overview of the global situation, to register and comprehend and conceive these changes. Definitely the strong side of the Valdai Club is the capability of its participants to look beyond the trivial and the obvious, not following the agenda imposed by the global information space. And Internet, has been contributing in various respects to that, and this is difficult to assess. Trying to bring up our own issues and present our own visions, half opening the veil that conceals the day of tomorrow. This is not so easy, but sometimes we succeed, including here at this venue of Valdai. But we noted on many occasions that we're living at a juncture with rapid and profound changes, I'd say dramatic changes, and no one definitely can fully foresee the future. That does not rid us of obligation to be ready for anything that can happen. Actually, as the recent times and recent developments have shown, we should be ready for anything, and everyone's responsibility is huge for the fate of their own and for this country, and the stakes are extremely high. The annual report of the Valdai Club has been dedicated this time to the multipolar, polycentric world. And this topic has long been on the agenda, but now it merits our special attention. I'm in agreement with the organizers. The actual multipolarity defines the frame of reference that the states operate in. I'd like to try to describe the distinctive traits of today. First of all, it is a much more open or creative space of foreign affairs conduct. There is nothing that has been predetermined in advance. Things may develop differently, and a lot depends on the accuracy and the balance of measure and the degree of restraint and the degree of well-thought-over actions of all the stakeholders. And in this ample space, it's very easy to lose your way and lose your bearings, and as we can see, that happens quite often. Secondly, this multipolar space is very dynamic. Changes happen, as I have said, rapidly and abruptly overnight. And it's hard to prepare for them, it's hard to predict them, and one should respond instantly, in real time. Third, what is important, this space is much more democratic, paving the way for a big number of political, economic stakeholders to come into play. Probably never in history we had that many countries in the global arena that seek to influence the regional and global developments. And a bigger role than ever before is played by the cultural, historical, civilization specifics of different countries. One should find common ground and concurrence of interest. No one is ready to play by the rules set by someone somewhere far away. As a well-known song goes, behind the mists or over the oceans. Hence the faith. All decisions are possible based on the accords that would be okay for all the interested or related stakeholders. Otherwise, no viable solution would be attained. Only and merely gaudy phrases and fruitless play of ambitions. Hence, to attain the results, harmony and balance are needed. And finally, the opportunities and threats of the multipolar world are inseparable from each other. Definitely, the weakening of dictate that was typical of the previous period and expansion of the freedom for all is an obvious boon. At the same time, in this context, it's much more difficult to strike this solid balance, which is actually a blatant and extreme risk per se. So such situation on the planet that I have tried to briefly portray is a brand new phenomenon. The international affairs are going through a radical transformation. Paradoxically, multipolarity has become the direct effect of attempts to impose and maintain the global hegemony. The response of the international system and the history itself to the obtrusive aspiration to fit all in a single hierarchy with the West at the top. A failure of such an undertaking was only a matter of time, and we were warned about that always. And by historical standards, that happened quite rapidly. 35 years ago, when it seemed that the confrontation was coming to a close and the Cold War was coming to a close, we hoped that for an advent of the epoch of true cooperation, it seemed that no ideological and other obstacles were there that would preclude to resolve jointly uniform problems and common problems for the humankind, sorting out and resolving conflicts and disputes, building upon the mutual respect and taking into account everybody's interest. Let me digress and give a historical excursus here. Our country, wishing to eliminate the grounds for bloc-based confrontation, create the common space of security, stated 2 times that we were ready to join NATO. For the first time, it was back in 1954, in the Soviet times, and for the second time during a visit by President Clinton, U.S. President Clinton, in Moscow in the year 2000, when we spoke about that with him, and both times we were turned down, straight away. I repeat, we were ready for joint work and non-linear steps in the global security and stability sphere, but our Western counterparts were not ready to rid themselves of the captivity of geopolitical and historical stereotypes and this simplistic world view. And I stated about that on many occasions in public. When we spoke with President Clinton, he said, it's very interesting, I think it's possible, but several hours later in the evening he said, I sought the advice of my team, it's unfeasible. And when will it be feasible? It boiled down to nothing. So a real opportunity to shift to the positive vector is something that we had, but alas, some different approach prevailed. The Western countries succumbed to see and have this absolute and wield this absolute power. This was a serious, strong temptation, and not to succumb, one had to have some historical vision and good intellectual level of education and groundwork, and those who made the decisions did not have this high capacity. The power of the United States and their allies peaked at the end of the 20th century, but there can be no single force that can run the world on its own, prescribing what should be done to everybody, how everyone should breathe. There were some attempts of that, but they all failed. At the same time, one should note that many believe that the so-called liberal world order was acceptable or even convenient. Well, yes, hierarchy would limit the capability of those who are not at the top of the pyramid of the food chain, if you permit me, but still, at the same time, they reside at the food, but still, that would lift a big chunk of responsibility from them. Just the rules are as follows: just accept the set of conditions, fit into the system, and you receive your dues, and be happy, think of nothing. Others will think and make decisions instead of you. No matter what they say, no matter what they use as pretexts, that was the case, and the experts in this room know that. Some people were conceited enough to believe that they can admonish everybody. Others played up to the strong ones, being obedient, bargaining chip and item and trade, avoiding problems and receiving their small perks. And now in the old world in Europe, we have a lot of such politicians left still. Those who were not in agreement, tried to uphold their interests, were considered kind of weirdos, to put it mildly, and they were told nothing will come out of that, and so you are nothing against our power, an empty spot. The most recalcitrant ones were educated by the self-proclaimed grandees, and without any scruples, and resistance was useless, they said. That did not result in anything good. Not a single global problem was resolved. At the same time, still new and new problems keep piling up. The global governance institutions created in the past either don't operate and work properly or have lost their efficiency to a huge extent. No matter what capability or potential a single country might have, any power has its limits. And in Russia we know that there is a proverb saying, might makes right. However, there may be a stronger might. There always can be a stronger